Hello, everybody. This is James Fee, and this is Hangouts with James Fee on a very special Tuesday. Hey, Madeline, how you doing?
Hi, doing well, James. How are
Yeah, you
you?
showed. Yeah, I'm doing okay. We also have Steve Coast, all the way in sunny Seattle. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Yes, the weather failed us today.
What?
The weather failed us today. It's been sunny up until today, in fact.
It's depressing. Well, just know that I'm here in Arizona with my air conditioner still running.
That's it. Someone's got to burn that coal.
Right? Well, as long as some other place, actually we're all it's all nuclear here. There's like a big
Even better.
Yeah, so how could that there's no way that won't turn out well. So we're doing a special Tuesday because I will be at the South Florida GIS Expo. You got to be careful because it's like GIS and Expo together spell sex.
Huh.
Sexpo, the GIS Sexpo.
GIS.
So, boy, this just didn't start out well, did it?
Where can I buy my tickets?
Yeah, you can buy them probably online. I'm sure it's sold out by now, but it's in West Palm Beach, Florida, so I will be there for the rest of the week. So we're having Steve on a day early and in the afternoon, so we'll see how the afternoon works. So, you're now working for Microsoft. You're now integrating OpenStreetMap into Microsoft Bing Maps now. Is that how it's working?
Well, James, I think my role is slightly broader than just using OpenStreetMap, but
No.
that's a large part of it. It's more about where a map's going to be in the future and how can we best use the things that are out there and bring a lot of that culture to the company. So it's not just we're going to use OpenStreetMap. It's a lot bigger than that.
So before you go any further, I have to know, where is the line between Nokia and Bing in the mapping?
See, the reason I love you, James, is you ask these challenging questions. And
Is there a line? Or is it more of a fuzzy, warm, campfire, kumbala kind of thing in the middle there?
so they're our partner. We use their maps. We get on great. They've been very useful for our Windows Phone development and shipping units. So I don't know. I mean, it's not something I'm deeply involved in. I mean, it's almost if you could ask me about SQL Server or something. I mean, I don't know anyone there either. Microsoft is a 100,000 person organization, so I just can't know everything.
That's kind of depressing in a way.
Um, I don't think so. I think it's good because there's a lot of different people here, and there's a lot of different stuff you can do.
So do you know anybody on the Xbox team? I figure everybody has to know somebody in the Xbox team, right? Isn't that the goal?
I actually don't, and they've been pretty heads down as far as I know for some time. So, no, I don't. But I enjoy playing my Xbox.
Right? So there was a project, I think it was about a year ago, maybe it was a little bit longer, time flies when you get old, of basically creating points on top of buildings.
Right.
What's the status on that? Maybe you can explain. I don't know if Madeline knows about this, but maybe explain what you were doing. I thought it was a fascinating project.
So the question is, OpenStreetMap, in order to reach the next level, needs two things. It needs addressing data, and it needs data that's useful for turn-by-turn navigation. Now the problem is neither of those is particularly exciting or fun to go and collect, right? So we have a lot of people who draw on top of aerial imagery to create roads or footpaths or buildings. We have people that take GPSs out, but going back and then finding where every single house is problematic. We also have multiple different schemes around the world for how house numbers are laid out. For example, in the United States, it's pretty simple. It's you find the start of the street and then you can count from there, right? In the UK, it's more complicated. There's a lot of houses with house names. And then you go to somewhere like Japan where it has to be on the ground collection because the houses are numbered by age, which you can't figure out any other way. So how do you try and make this fun? One of the things that I tried to do was a simple little Mechanical Turk-like game which allowed you to look on top of aerial imagery and take house numbers where we knew roughly where they were, like we might know the parcel, for example. And then we know where the center of the parcel is, but we don't necessarily know where the house is within the parcel. So you could create a little thing where the pin is near the house, and then you could just drag it on a map to the house, and then we share out that data. Unfortunately, it's just a pure problem of attracting people to get interested in addressing, and it's not the world's most exciting thing to do. I mean, when you could go to the GIS sex conference or whatever you told me it was in Florida, or you go and do some house numbers, what are you going to do, James? So
maybe if my airplane has Wi-Fi on it, I can do both.
If my airplane has Wi-Fi on it, I'm watching Netflix.
Do you think that the Knight Foundation grant, for those of you who don't know, Knight Foundation just gave $575,000 to Development Seed and MapBox to improve the user interface, I guess, the edit interface for OSM? Do you think that will help with the addressing?
I strongly encourage them to take that tack, so I hope so. But I have limited influence at Development Seed, so I don't know what they're going to do with the money. I have some ideas, and I think they're going to spend time communicating what they're going to do at the upcoming State of the Map conference in Portland next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going, Madeline?
I'm going to be there, yeah. I'll be volunteering with the video recording some of the sessions. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am not going. I am going to be in Florida, but I will be watching remotely.
What are you doing in Florida, James?
Well, I'm keynoting a GIS Sexpo.
There you go.
Going to talk some Python, Steve.
Good
Python
times.
scripting. Does that? See, you're wasting your time. You should come with me.
And it's going to be warmer, so.
Yeah, it's 84 every day. Except it's going to rain, but I think it's going to rain up in Portland too. So, right?
Yeah, we've got rain in the forecast. First time since June, I think we'll have a real rain. So.
Yeah, that's too bad. But so is that? I mean, I guess that comes back to the one thing. Clear with Apple's maps, people have been sort of joking around how bad they are. The biggest problem, as you sort of pointed out, is if you don't have an endpoint, a point of interest where you want to go, it doesn't matter how good the roads are, you can't navigate to where you want to go. So clearly that is probably the most important thing as far as using OpenStreetMap for navigation, right?
Right. I mean, it's the number one thing I hear from everybody who wants to use OpenStreetMap commercially is the data quality is great as a display map. Well done on choosing a topological data model behind the thing, that's great. But we need address data. And here in the United States, address data is actually relatively available. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different places you can go get it with varying degrees of quality, right? You can extract it from Tiger. There's a number of people who will sell you aggregated parcel databases, and there's other sources. But the rest of the world, it's even harder. How you go and get those extra data sets is very tough. How do you reverse engineer a postcode database for the United Kingdom? Or how do you get addresses for Italy? Or a lot of these countries where the government feels that they should own all the map data and be the authoritative source of it. It's just very time consuming to go reverse engineer that. So you need some kind of step change. And those things are almost out there. I mean, when OpenStreetMap started, it's not like we were all walking around with smartphones. I mean, when OpenStreetMap started, everything that's in a smartphone I was carrying around as a separate device, right? I had a phone, a GPS, a camera, and now that those are much more available, there's a whole bunch of different opportunities out there on how to collect that data. But essentially, we either collect that data or we become a side street because I'm not sure I want to make that pun. We become a dead end, maybe, because in order to quote unquote compete with the large mapping suppliers, if you don't have addressing data and you don't have turn restrictions, you're just not relevant for a consumer mapping solution.
Is there a particular country or area that's doing really well in this regard?
As ever, Germany, but it's just not. I think people have tried many times to try and take lessons from Germany and extend them to other places in the world, because the OpenStreetMap German community is extremely efficient, I think is the word. But then on the other hand, I just went to State of the Map in Tokyo a few weeks ago, and those guys make the Germans look chaotic, right? So if anyone can figure out how to take the level of energy and dedication that those communities have and scale it to the US, I'd love to know, because multiple people, including me, have tried to figure it out. And there are, just one quick example. Pub meetups don't tend to work in the United States, in my experience, mainly because drinking and driving is such an issue. I mean, in the UK, everybody drinks and drives. But it's more that public transit is available in, for example, London and Birmingham and major cities throughout Europe that just isn't available here to make that kind of community building work. So you need to build your community some other way, right? So geocaching, as an example, is a company that's done very well at building these communities, even in the United States, where the community isn't built around alcohol consumption, right? And the level of effort required to go and do that here is quite large, which is why I think no private company or individual has done it yet. Maybe it's something the OpenStreetMap board in the US would be able to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a different scale too, right? My county, Maricopa County, Arizona, is like the size of Germany.
Right.
It's a couple less people, but still, the scale once you get outside of these smaller countries it's great. So it becomes harder to, Japan is a great example, like Germany. They're homogeneous, they're small, they're very urban. It should be easy to do.
Right.
Russia, not so much.
Question from viewer the Stevo, who's also been on the show. He wants to know what happened to all the corporate types helping out OSM. Where did they all go?
I'm unaware that they've gone anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know what that question is either.
So we have, I don't think you can find a mapping company on the planet which doesn't have some kind of involvement with OpenStreetMap today. I mean, whether it's some guys doing R&D with it to sponsoring a project or writing some software, right? Everyone from Esri to MapQuest to Microsoft. I mean, everybody is using OpenStreetMap in some capacity. And I tell you that the conversation I have again and again is when is it going to be good enough? Right? And that's a really hard conversation to have because firstly, when you're explaining, you're losing. So try and avoid the conversation. And then secondly, it's difficult because you have all of these people who are ready to make some kind of switch the minute everybody else does. Right? Yeah. And we need some kind of catalyst to help people make the leap. There's a great website that Richard Fairhurst and friends put together called Switch to OSM. Resources like that are useful, but there's a lot of private conversations that happen behind the scenes as well.
Mm-hmm. Steve-O replies, seriously, MapQuest spun down the unit, and Microsoft was the last announcement, and how does that match up with all the NavTech stuff?
Yeah, how about that NavTech stuff there, Steve?
So the great thing about the Steve-O is I think he's America's cynic. I mean, I don't think you could find another person in California being so cynical. But I think MapQuest spun down the unit isn't entirely accurate. Not that I'm here to comment on what MapQuest does. Microsoft made a fairly large investment in OpenStreetMap by making the aerial imagery available. MapQuest made large donations, and I think many times people have invested in OpenStreetMap thinking that it's going to be finished sooner than it is. And this barrier of addressing is really the next thing. And so I think you'll find a lot more publicity about the things that people are doing behind the scenes once it's easy and comfortable to discuss the project, because you're not discussing a hypothetical anymore. You're discussing map data that is actually up to quality for the use cases that they need it.
I aspire to the Steve-O's level of cynicism. Thanks, Frank. Oh, you appreciate it. So moving beyond Steve, bless his little heart, Open Geocoder. What's going on with that? That was a kind of a cool project earlier in the year you were highlighting. You doing anything more with that?
Yes. So my attitude with these things is to try lots of different stuff and see what sticks, right? And Open Geocoder was one of the things which actually did stick a little bit, but needs a lot more volume. The basic premise behind it, I'm unearthing from my memory my pitch. There's two basic parts to this story. When you make a geocoder, the first thing is the data is typically hard, right? You have to go and find this data. OpenStreetMap is one source, and there are many others. And a geocoder is made up of two parts. It's the data, and then you've also got the big software component. And the software, similarly, is this big, gigantic, complicated piece of software, right? You take in a map that is typically formatted for rendering. Like you could say, well, I will say OpenStreetMap, the data model is basically done there as a primary for routing, then rendering, and then geocoding, right? Just when you look at the way the data is organized. Then you want to take in this data, you want to do some processing to it, and then put it in a database that is optimized for your use case. So if you're doing rendering, you want to order the data by geographical region because you want to access it quickly based on that, or by layer, or whatever it is, right? With geocoding, you have to do a lot of processing, and then you have a large piece of software to process inputs from people and then turn it into a geocodable result, right? Mm-hmm. What if you could skip all of that? The easiest way to skip all of that is to look at the input and the output. The input is a string, so I type in Portland, or I type in America, or whatever. And then the output, 99% of the time, is a bounding box, right? So I'm not talking about point of interest searching. I'm just talking about geocoding itself. So I type in London, and it takes me to London, and it puts a pin in the middle and says this is London, right? So the input is a string, and the output is a bounding box, which is just 4 numbers. So what if you had an API and a service where you could take these strings and allow anyone to assign bounding boxes to them, just like OpenStreetMap allows anyone to add a road, or Wikipedia allows people to write articles. And then the history is all there in the project, so when someone changes the location of London, you can go back. And then you can do neat things, like if people start using this as your geocoder, and you don't have that string, the string can be put in a list for other people to go fix and add, right? So that was the basic idea, and a whole bunch of people actually started using it. I had some people using it in their phone applications. All kinds of interesting little stuff, but it just requires a lot more time than I've had. And if people start emailing me saying this is fantastic, spend more time on it, then I will. But yeah, I think it has a lot of potential, and I think things like that have a lot of potential, because innovation is so bursty in the geographical world. You know, OpenStreetMap basically hasn't changed in terms of the API, the front page of the website, whatever, in years, and it's still going very strong. But there's still so much to do, and geocoding is part of that puzzle.
That was deep.
Yeah, it's interesting. Got a question from one of our viewers. Are there any plans of moving into another theme of data other than base mapping and street data? If so, what data do you envision OSM getting into next?
Pretty much anything. So it can be a misconception that you look at OpenStreetMap and you see the map and that's all that's there. Actually, there's a huge amount of data behind the map that you don't see, because if you try to render everything, it would be too messy and you wouldn't be able to get anything out of it. So there are lots and lots of different types of data sets behind there. I mean, political boundaries are one on a micro level that you don't see very often, or people doing base jumping spots, or addressing points, or points of interest, or there's tons and tons of stuff you don't see. And there's several sources on the web you can go to and render the map how you want it, either showing or not showing things that are important and or useful to you, and changing the cartography, the colors, the sizes, those kinds of things.
Cool, thanks. I forgot to mention that was Danny from New York who asked that.
So do you think right now, if you had to generalize, would OpenStreetMap really be just a cartographic project? I mean, up till now, I know maybe that's selling it a little short. I mean, you could laugh as I say it, but that has been seeming most of the focus, and where most of the magic has happened is on the cartographic capabilities of OpenStreetMap.
Right.
Is that just easier?
Well, there's 3 parts to this. There's the data that's being built. There's the software around the core of the project, and then there's the reusable components, right? So the data set that's being built is fantastic, and it's growing all the time. And I'm pretty biased, but I think the OpenStreetMap is going to be the map that everyone uses in some number of years' time, because it's going to be the one that's free and available and editable, and no one else is doing that. The software that is used and in the core of the server itself is extremely useful, and you can repurpose that. And then there's this whole chunk of other stuff: tile rendering, geocoding software, routing, and so on, which has blossomed because now that there is data available. Whereas this stuff used to be closed research projects, or companies would go and build a tile renderer. Now lots more people need it because the data is available. So personally, I think it's much bigger than that. Yes, is it a display map today, and is there a focus on cartography? Sure, of course. But that's just because the address data isn't there to make it a compelling consumer experience yet, right? The routes are actually pretty good. If you have 2 points and you want to route between them and a decent routing engine, you can go try this on open.mapquest.com. The routes that are spit out are very good. The remaining piece is just addressing. And once the community figures out how to collect a significant chunk of addressing points, or gets it to the point where it's snowballing, then you're going to see lots of other uses of the map. But you can't do a lot of that stuff without addressing data.
Yeah, and gets back to sort of the geocoding, the addressing, all that other stuff. It's probably why you've been focused on some of those things.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So there's some sort of, if we read the tea leaves, we can see where Steve thinks we should be going, right?
Yes, and if only everyone listened to me, then the world would be so much better.
The benevolent dictator that you are, right?
Approximately.
Yeah, I was worried you were going to say you weren't very benevolent, but I wonder. I mean, going back, there's a lot of things. Yahoo is one of those companies you sort of laugh at when you think about mapping. But I always like their "Where on Earth" identifiers that they created.
Right.
I mean, are you guys thinking maybe something like that?
I can't speak for Microsoft, but I mean, personally speaking, yes, Where on Earth was great, WoW IDs were great. The unfortunate thing when they released that data, so for people who don't know, there isn't a freely available, I forget what the technical term for it is, but a graph of all the places in the world. So Portland knows it's in Oregon, Oregon knows it's in America, and you have the locations of these things, and then you also have the translations and transliterations so that you know what America is in Italian and French and Spanish and so on. Where on Earth was, from memory, a company that, Yahoo acquired some company with this big data set, and then a bunch of guys wanted to open source that data and make it available, which is a good thing, because there isn't an openly available directed graph like that.
Yeah.
The problem was that they released it under Creative Commons, which is, you have to squint because it's a data set, it's not a copyrightable work, well, depending on your point of view. And then the other part is that, from memory, they released everything apart from the latitudes and longitudes. Well, there was some key that they didn't release, and I'm pretty sure it was latitude and longitude. So you had this big set of place names, translations, you had the relationships between them, but then the key part that would actually make it all useful, they kept for themselves, which is fine, it's their choice.
Yeah.
So someone needs to go and rebuild that as a wiki, and that was one of the motivators for the OpenGeocoder thing that I did.
Yeah. So I think those are really awesome. And I think that's sort of in a way that OpenStreetMap can innovate on that, because they're not stuck with legacy business models as far as, you have to do this, we're paying some company for the rights for their geocoder, we're licensing it from someone else. You can actually create something, this is how we should do it.
Uh-huh.
And if I was a benevolent dictator, that is how I would do it.
Well, see,
nobody listens to me.
The typical route to this kind of innovation, I mean, this is a meta point and maybe a meta comment. The typical route to this innovation in the open source world is, well, let's go and copy a proprietary piece of software, right? So people see Esri and they think Esri is really valuable, and so they say, hey, let's go and rewrite a new GIS and let's do it in Java so it works on 52 different computers. And then they find out that actually it's quite hard, and they get 80% of there, but people still stay for Esri for a whole bunch of reasons, right? Or they look at a geocoder and they think, geocoders for the last 20 years, the way we've written them is this way. We take in the data, we transform it, and then we have a complicated piece of software with a bunch of machine learning in it maybe, which can turn a string into a location based on this data set, right? Personally, I think just going and copying those old things en masse is not really going to help anybody. I mean, it's great that there are open source geocoders and routing engines, and that's fine, right? But if you actually want to make a dent in the universe, you've got to go do something fundamentally new. And that means it's more risky, which means it's more likely to fail, probably 90+% failure rate. But it means you have a much better chance of changing the way people do things. Thanks for joining us. This has been Steve Case.
Yeah, wow. Hey. It's very deep, man. But you're right. You're absolutely right. So I guess the big question is, with State of the Map coming up, what are a couple things that you're really looking forward to at State of the Map?
Well, I'm looking forward to my talk. Definitely. I think
we all
it's
are.
just going to blow the world. It's going to be amazing. The main thing I'm looking forward to is just meeting everybody. It's been a while since State of the Map Denver, when we had that. It's been a while since I've seen a lot of the people. It's hard to I mean, we're going to have a lot of people flying in internationally, but within the US, it's hard to get a lot of people in the same place at the same time. So that will be really good. I'm looking forward. I mean, conferences are always, to me, a lot about the hallway conversations, the after parties, those kinds of things. So that's a really big component. And then I'm looking forward to a whole bunch of interesting talks. Henk Hoff, who's a OpenStreetMap Foundation board member, is going to speak after I am. I'm sure we're going to hear things from Development Seed, and there's going to be a whole bunch of other great talks. And the great thing about this conference is, since I started it, it's got better and better every year, right? And that's another meta point, is this project only succeeds by letting go and allowing people to go take over and run things how they see best. So, State of the Map Tokyo was the first one where I basically didn't have any involvement at all, and it went extremely well. And it's great to see that State of the Map US is at that same point.
It's awesome. And plus, when it works like that, you get the residuals. Go ahead.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, question from one of the viewers. Gregory would like to know about your favorite mapping experience, Steve.
My favorite mapping experience. I've got some stories for you. Which one should I tell you? Which one is safe for broadcast? That's the real question.
There is no. We don't have there's no. This is whatever goes.
Oh, really?
There's no
Let's create some controversy.
Yeah.
I can tell you. I can't remember how long ago this was. It must be 2 or 3 years ago. I was in Italy, in northern Italy, in the Dolomites. I forget the name of the town. And I was at this little OpenStreetMap Italy conference, and I went to the after party at a restaurant, and there's this big long table serving, beautiful homemade pizzas and stuff, and there's maybe 40 people there or something. And halfway through, someone grabs me and they ask me to come over, and I'm standing there, and I don't speak Italian, which is definitely an issue if you're in Italy, and I get handed this baby, and I'm just holding this baby, and I'm like, that's great, maybe you get to hold babies in Italy, this is part of the culture, right? And then someone grabs a camera and they're taking photos of me and a baby, then me and a baby and this couple. And it took a good couple of minutes for someone who could translate to come over, and they explained that this baby was conceived at the first mapping party in Italy. Without you, Steve, without you, this particular baby would not exist.
Oh boy.
So there's amusing little stories like that. The other one is, I'm not surprised anymore by OpenStreetMap, I mean, in a positive way. So, again, similar kind of time frame, maybe 3-4 years ago, I was sitting down with a guy, and the spiel to get people involved in OpenStreetMap back then was to try and show them their area and allow them to make an edit, like sit there at a computer with them and show them how to add or fix something. So this guy wanted to zoom in on Cuba, so I had to give like a couple of minutes speech on how OpenStreetMap is great in places where we have the free time to edit the map and we have internet connectivity and blah, blah, blah. But there's unlikely to be anything in Cuba, but we can go look and see how good it is, right? So this guy, we zoomed into Cuba, and of course it's complete. I mean, house numbers, hospitals, roads, footpaths, And that was the point where I ceased to be surprised by data quality or the ability of people to collect data.
Yeah, because you'd assume, like most of us, that there's no way anybody would have the rights to even write down an address in Cuba.
Yeah, I mean, my knowledge of Cuban citizenship rights is vague and mostly driven by the right-wing U.S. media. So my assumptions would be similar to yours. But it was, all over the world, this stuff is incredible. The other thing that doesn't cease to surprise me is people coming up and telling me how it's not going to work, which is which has been since the beginning, and we're still having that conversation.
Cool. Oh, I'm locked up. I'm locked up.
Locked up? Ah.
I can't move. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, there it goes. My mouse froze.
Ah.
I got an instant message from somebody, and it just Google went down. So let's go to North Korea. See how North Korea looks, Steve.
I actually know the answer to that question, and
Not so
you can screen share and go and look. Actually, you might be surprised. Both North and South Korea are not as good as they should be, but far better than you would find anywhere else.
Yeah.
And isn't the GIS Corps doing humanitarian addition to OSM? There, like a big volunteer project in North Korea. I think I heard something about that.
Great. I'm fully support our GIS brothers mapping North Korea. I just hope they have really good diplomatic relations. I don't know.
I don't know much about it.
You just can't have a passport that has ever been stamped in the U.S. and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I think you have to enter with a Swiss passport and leave with, I don't know, a South African one or something.
Yeah, I think they're doing it with the aerial imagery. Maybe something donated. Not sure. Anyway.
Right.
Well, cool. Well, I think we've got about half an hour in, aren't we, Madeline?
Yeah, we've exceeded the half-hour time limit. It's been fun.
Crazy how that goes. Not like our old ones where we went for 2 hours of babbling. Whatever happened?
James, oh no.
I think I know what he was going to ask.
Those old episodes, did you just toss them? I was looking. Go ahead, ask it then.
It's cutting in and out, but I think James is asking about whatever happened to This Week in Maps.
Yep.
Basically, I've got a mortgage to pay, so if there's some way that I can find to turn that time into something a bit more productive, we'd do it all over again. I mean, the great thing about This Week in Maps is it had a great following. It was fun to do, but it was hard work to put it together, as I'm sure you guys find, and I didn't have an assistant to help me. So if someone wants to take, I can pass on the torch if someone wants to take it over, or if we can figure out a way to make it work again, then we should do that. Or as Ian White told me earlier today, pretty much you've taken over this torch, James. It's like this is This Week in Maps, but with 2 people. Right?
And only half an hour.
Yeah, but you're doing it, which is the important thing.
Yeah, so you're number 2. We had Tyler on.
I think of myself as number 1, but sure.
No, Tyler's number 1 because why the heck did we invite Tyler before you?
Because he's so gregarious.
Because big data is hip, and that's where it's at, right?
Yes.
There's money in big data.
Yes, at least VC money.
Yeah, well, that's what O'Reilly tells me in his little blog. Oh well. Well, Steve, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
Yeah, we'll do this again, maybe, and we'll be looking forward. So next week is all going to be broadcast live, Madeline, from State of the Map.
Yes, I think so. I don't know the details yet. Actually,
right.
I don't know if it's live or not.
I guess we'll see it on Twitter then, right? Everything's on Twitter. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week. Next week we have Michael Goodchild.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Michael Goodchild.
Michael Goodchild next week. So VGI, from crowdsourcing to VGI. That's the kind of segue we do. So
Okay.
we'll see you all next week. Take care, guys.
Cheers.